Hello, it's Miss O, and I'm going to be talking to you today about subjects and verbs. So when it comes to understanding subjects and verbs, it's very important to note that a subject and a verb must be in every complete sentence. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about where they appear and what order in which they appear. But just make sure that you kind of get married to the idea that in order for a sentence to be complete, it has to have a subject and a verb. If a sentence is missing either of these, usually we refer to that as an incomplete sentence, or we might call it a sentence fragment. But those types of sentences don't serve well when it comes to proper English and proper writing, so you want to make sure you always have a subject and a verb in every sentence. When it comes to defining subjects, a subject is a noun or a pronoun, so this is a person, place, thing, or idea, and I give you some different examples of things that can serve as subjects here with Sarah, Michael, he, she, the cat, the fire, so on and so forth. Anything that's a person, place, thing, or idea, or a pronoun can serve as a subject in a sentence. The subject is the performer of the sentence, and I would say this is probably what sets it apart from any other nouns or pronouns that are in a sentence. As far as who or what is doing something in the sentence, that is going to determine what your subject is. It could also be who or what is being described in a sentence too. Subjects can be either present or understood. So in the case of command sentences or imperative types of sentences that give a command or tell you to do something, the subject is going to be an understood you. So it's not actually something that you physically see in the sentence, but because it is a sentence directed at telling you to do something, it's an understood you, making you, or the understood you, the subject there. And then also when it comes to number, subjects can be singular or plural. So with the first example, Jane rides bikes, we have a singular subject here with just Jane. However, with the second sentence, Jane and Alyssa ride bikes, we have a plural subject because we have both Jane and Alyssa doing something in that sentence. Let's define verbs. Verbs are action words, and they need to match the subject in tense, so this is past, present, or future, as well as in number, so singular or plural. So with the last example that I talked about, our verb actually changed when we had singular versus plural subjects because Jane rides bikes, but Jane and Alyssa ride bikes. So that's an example of that there. The verb usually comes after the subject in sentences, but it doesn't always sit next to it. So it would be correct for us to say Brian likes soccer. However, if we were to say soccer Brian likes, that sounds kind of funny. I don't think any of you out there are actually speaking like this or writing like this for that matter. And that's good.
Okay, so let's practice with some sample sentences that I have here on the board, and we will just identify subject and verb with these sentences here. So the first one says, I like cheeseburgers. It's a pretty simple sentence. And when you're trying to identify the subject and the verb in any sentence, you always have to ask yourself first, who or what is doing something in the sentence or being described. In this case, I am the person who's doing something, so I'm just going to underline I once. And then as far as what it is that I am doing in this sentence, I am liking cheeseburgers, so I'm going to underline like twice. In these videos, when you are watching me identify certain words and I underline stuff, always, 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 when I underline something once, that means it's the subject, and underlining twice means that it's the verb, just so that you don't get thrown off when you're watching more of these. Okay. For the next sentence, Amy plays softball. Again, we have to ask ourselves who or what is doing something in this sentence, in which case Amy is doing something in this sentence. She plays softball. So first I'm going to underline Amy because she's our subject and what it is that she's doing, playing softball. So I'll underline plays twice. Number 3, we checked out books from the library. Who or what is doing something in this sentence? It sounds like we are. So I'm going to underline we once. What it is that we are doing is checking out books from the library, so I'm going to underline checked out twice. Lastly, Mike gave me great advice. Again, who or what is doing something in this sentence would be Mike, so I'll underline Mike once. And then what it is that Mike is doing is that he has given me some great advice. So I'm going to underline here gave twice as the verb. I hope that you're noticing some consistency when it comes to the order in which subject and verb appear. Always subject first, verb second. Subject first, verb second. Subject first, verb second. Subject first, verb second. And that's standard. The only time that you really see those two flip in order is when you have a sentence that asks a question, in which case sometimes your subject may come after your verb in a question, since we order things differently for question type sentences. But when it comes to sentences that make a statement or give a command, or any of those other types of interjections or exclamatory types of sentences, you're always going to have the subject be first and the verb second. Now, don't get into the habit of thinking that the subject and verb have to sit next to each other all the time. I'm going to cover with you adjectives and adverbs, and I will show you some examples of times when the subject and verb are not right next to each other. But definitely when it comes to the order, subject is always first and verb is second.